Welcome to the Maker's Image podcast produced by Crafted Network. My name is Koby Dickenson, and in this episode, I sit down for a conversation with Sherita Harkness. Sherita is a speaker, writer, voiceover artist, and owner of a creative experiential design and strategic consulting boutique called Trading Fourz, located in the Chicago area. She travels across the U.S. and around the globe, collaborating with corporations, organizations, churches, and small businesses to innovate creative and strategic business solutions that empower teams to radically capitalize on the products, services, and experiences they provide. Today, she shares her story of how God has been with her every step of her career and how He has shown Himself in the middle of the hard moments she has experienced along the way. Here is episode 11 of The Maker's Image. Sherita, thank you so much for being on The Maker's Image today. I appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this. I know you're a busy lady. And you have a lot of things that your hand is in, and I appreciate the time that you're setting aside to be a part of the Maker's Image today. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, busy lady. I mean, I'm gracious, okay? That came through. I was like, yes, Koby, yes. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you for the quick yes. So you are a line of things. You're a speaker, a producer, a writer, voiceover artist, a business owner, so many things. Mm-hmm. And we all in this space are aware that that kind of thing does not happen overnight. So why don't you start with just sharing the story of how you've gotten to where you are today and how these pieces kind of fit together.
So you know that I don't tell stories, I don't lie, okay? So when I tell you this, I don't want you to, whoever's listening, they just need to know, like, I'm not saying this to be holy because I don't need that. Sure. So, it's just Jesus, because I never wanted to do any of them except one. So I think, honestly, when I was praying about like how to share this, I just was like, it started when I was 5. Mm-hmm. My parents took me, we lived in Ohio, and they took me, I don't know to what church this was, but it was a play called The Toy Maker's Son and The Toy Maker's Dream. And so we went, it's actually a book. I looked it up ever since I've been older, and it's like some German story, but they turned it into a play. And but at the end of the play, basically the stories is told as toys, and so God is the toy maker, and all these toys rebel against the toy maker. So he has to send his son to like befriend the toys. And it's like a Geppetto Pinocchio, but he's not in a whale. Okay, so go on, and like at the end they ask you, who wants to be friends with the toy maker's son for the rest of your life. So I was like, me, I want to be his friend. And I was sitting with my mom. My mom is a Black woman. And so she said, you sit your tail right here, don't you move. And not that every Black woman says that, but she said it in that voice. Like I knew, like if I move, I'm in trouble, right? So I looked at her and I said, I'm going to be his friend. I know what I'm doing. And she said, I got up and I walked down to the front, and I was 5. Wow. Yeah. And my dad was like, well, go down there with her. Like, go make sure she's okay. Yeah. And I don't think it was like a thing where she wanted to keep me from doing it. It was just more she thought I was playing, right? Mm-hmm. Which I think a lot of times when we're talking about kids, you think, oh, they don't know. They don't understand. But like, I knew what I was doing. So then I attribute the rest of my following Jesus to my grandmother, who a few weeks later, we were at her house, and I kept saying, come on, Jesus. Come on, Jesus. She said, who are you talking to? I said, I'm talking to Jesus. She said, why are you telling him to come on? I said, because he's my friend. So we're going to go play. She said, let me tell you something. You don't tell Jesus to follow you. You follow Jesus. You ask him where he wants to go, and then you follow him. Yeah. So I stood there for a second, kind of like, oh, sorry. And I said, I'm sorry, Jesus. Where you want to go? So we're clearly in the back of my grandmother's house in her garden. My grandma was like, he wants you to go in the house. So we go inside. But from that point, I think that kind of just reframed for me as a kid. Oh, well, I want to be friends with Jesus, or I want to be my friend, then I need to follow him. Right. Yeah. So I just started following. So that is literally every story in my life, how I how I went into teaching, because I wanted to do film and television. Went to school for that, got paid money at Florida State and Georgia State for that. And when I got the opportunity to talk with the producer at the time in 2000 something, that was like a big deal.
Sure.
God was like, go to this school and learn how to be a teacher. And I was like, you have lost your mind. I don't even like children. Not like that. Like, I don't want to teach them. And then he was like, do it. And I was like, no, God, like, come on, find something else.
Yeah.
I get a phone call the next day from a school I never applied to in Georgia. And they're like, we want you to be a part of our cohort. Oh, how did you get my number?
Yeah.
Nobody to this day can tell me. And I got a master's degree in education because Jesus invited me into that, right?
Yeah.
And then I started teaching that same year because Jesus said, and magically, my magic is not crazy. It's Jesus magic.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
he owns it first. So magically, I get this invite to like teach at this school. The same day I start school, this little Indian boy comes walking down the hallway, and he has 6 girls on like 3 on either side around him, hooked into his arm. And I hear Holy Spirit say, you're going to adopt him. That's your son. I said, you have lost your mind. I'm here with these little people. I don't even like them. I'm definitely not taking him. He looked like a hot mess. And God was like, that's yours. So like,
Wow.
by the end of the year, I now am 25. I've adopted an Indian child. And then fast forward, he turns like 17. He wants to go do his own thing, or 16. He wanted to go back and live with his family, who did not want him. So we're in this whole thing, and Holy Spirit was like, you got to let him go. I'm like, but you told me to adopt him. He's like, you got to let him go. Like, yes, I have a whole nother plan. So then my next yes was to Dubai. That was random. I thought Osama bin Laden was going to kill me.
Yeah.
It was the Syrian war. I was like, Obama is not coming to look for me if I die over in the Middle East. Like, I'm not that important. And I ended up being there and working with a school system. It was for Emirati girls. And that was also a Jesus thing. So like the list just goes on for all the things. Working in the Sheikh's office, developing a curriculum for the UAE, getting asked to perform on stage with actors from like the West End London. I had not performed for like 10 years, getting asked to work at a church. And I was like, Jesus don't pay no money. Why are y'all asking me to work? At the time, I was making a lot of money working for the Sheikh's office. Yeah. And my pastor was like, I need you to come here. Simultaneously, another man at the church wants to plant a church that's a North Point partnership. And God had me a part of both of those. I helped plant Mosaic Church, and then was working at Fellowship Church Dubai. So like that's how I got into church world. Because Jesus just dropped me in there with no money and was like, trust me. And it worked, right? And then my mom had a stroke. And so I ended up coming back. And I thought, I'll go back. I'll just stay with help a little bit. She had another stroke. She ended up having about 7 strokes total.
Oh, my word.
And so I was like, well, great. So I couldn't work. I couldn't teach. And everybody's like, how'd you start your business? I'm like, Jesus and suffering. Okay. I could get no other job. I couldn't do anything else. And I went to church on my birthday. My mom is in the hospital. She can't walk. She can't talk. She can't do anything. I barely have savings left from Dubai because I had been living off of it the whole time I was home. And I went to Buckhead Church. And at the end of service, I was so angry with God, but I was like, I'm going to go up and go ask this lady to pray for me. And when I did, before I ever got back from Dubai, the guy who I helped plant, one of the guys who I helped plant the church with, wrote a letter to this lady particularly because she had been to our church. I didn't even know it. She had come on a day that I was working at my other church. And he told her, hey, if you ever meet this girl, Sherita, if she ever comes back to Atlanta, you should hire her.
Wow.
Give her a job. She's amazing. This is what she did. So I'm telling her my name and she says, what did you say your name was? And I was like, Sherita. And she's like, where are you from again? I was like, I'm from Atlanta, but I just came back from Dubai. And she's like, I know you. Your pastor said X, Y, and Z. I'm like, what? She said, he wrote me 3 years ago. So 3 years before I ever came home, before my mom ever had gotten in the situation she was in, God thought about me to like put me in position. And all because I went on my birthday when I was the most miserable person, my mom is in the hospital, to worship. I just thought if I can get to church, I'll figure something to do. And that was the answer. And so I started working in North Point Ministries, like as a contractor. And then I worked so many hours, and Obama made this rule that you had to have insurance for these people that work for you. I mean, it's a novel idea. And so they were like, we're not hiring you full time. You need to get a business or we can't work with you. So I started Trading Fourz. And the rest of, the story just, it's pivoted. It's gone on. It's all been mostly because of suffering, because of hard things. My son passed in 2018, just as we were like reconnecting and he was getting his life together and things were feeling a lot better for him and his story. And then he died in a car accident. And then after that, I lost my best friend. And then 2020 happened. Like all these different things just kept happening. I moved here for a job to work with the church. That church decided to go a different direction. I lost that job. Like I had bought a house. I'm like, Jesus, am I missing you somewhere? And again, my business came into play because God was like, if you let me use what you have, I'll use it, but you're gonna have to let me do it. And I was like, well, you're moving a little too slow. And we going around and around this Red Sea. I need you, let's get there. Okay, let's get to the Jordan part. All right. I don't need Joshua. I don't need Moses because they stayed in the desert too long. Get me to Joshua and Caleb. And God was like, let me just do a work on your heart. So that is how I've done all the things from voiceovers to, producing events to experience design to working with now organizational management. And people think there's no way you can do all of that. And I'm like, who told you to limit my Jesus? Number one.
Right.
And then don't limit me because you can't do it. Like everything I do well because Holy Spirit has given me the ability to do it. It sounds crazy, but I say yes. And then not always yes right away, but eventually, and he just works it out. So that literally is how I've done all of the things I've done.
When we first met back in 2020, that was still somewhat fresh of your son passing away, just 2 years away, year and a half, I guess. Yeah. And I remember that being a sensitive time in this walk that you just kind of laid out. And what you were just saying about your mom's strokes and those things, there was just a lot of floating things at that point in your life. Yeah. And I remember when we met and we talked on the phone before we recorded, all that kind of stuff, and I got to know you. Nothing spoke more to me about your testimony than the faith that you have in the middle of all of that you were still laughing, telling funny stories as you are right now, and in the middle of all of that. And so I've always appreciated that about you, and I think it's evident in your story. And so to me, knowing that story, it's no wonder to me that why there's 12 things on the list of things that you've done because you're quick to say yes with prayer behind it. That's what I would say. Right. And so I appreciate that about you. So you mentioned that brought you all the way up to Trading Fourz. Yeah. So what does the name represent and what does Trading Fourz do?
So Trading Fourz is actually a jazz term. Okay. And it's when you listen to jazz music, it's when the instruments trade off, usually every 4 bars, right? Oh, okay. So it could be 4 bars of 16 measure, 4 bars of 8, whatever the time signature is. So you don't notice it if you're in the audience, how they trade off. Right. But there's this like unspoken language for jazz artists. And I played clarinet and saxophone all the way up through college. So I could play them now. It's not going to be as good. But I was in jazz band and I grew up playing jazz when we lived in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So it just was ingrained in me and I love it. And there is this magic chemical, again with this magic, but literally it's scientifically proven that there's a chemical release when players are playing that they don't have to practice or rehearse that. It just kind of happens naturally. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then there's also a chemical that's unlocked in the listener's brain if you're listening as an audience, that there is no language. You just feel it. You just understand it. And it's the synergy, right? Okay. So I thought, at the time, all of my things fell in 4 categories, right? There was either strategy or it was entertainment or it was performance like production, or it was education. Okay. And so those were like the 4 industries I kind of crossed over. And I was like, gotcha. Well, I trade off between all 4 of them at any given time. Yeah. And so when I do, I don't have a language for it. I couldn't tell you how I do that. It just happens.
Yeah.
But it creates this synergy and this magic. And I noticed that people were always asking me for like one thing. They might say, hey, could you come, do this event? And I'm doing the event, but I know all this other stuff. So then I just go right into it. Like, okay, well, naturally you need this. So they were excited about, the things that I was doing. So I've pivoted. Before 2020, that was solely events based. I was doing just events and experience and some like performance for myself as far as like voiceover stuff. After 2020, when everything shut down, I lost, because there were no events. I lost everything. Right. And then I took a job here. So I was like, well, that was cute, Jesus. We're done. And then God was like, he didn't sound like that. That's how it felt. He was like, like James Earl Jones, like,
right.
Mufasa, that, right? Right? So he was talking in his Mufasa voice, like, no, my daughter, you will do this. And so I came back to it. And I was like, well, what is it now? I don't even want it. I'm too old. My knees are too old for it. You hear me? I'm yoga can't help this. I don't Pilates, wall Pilates. Yeah. I cannot stand for that long. And so Holy Spirit was like, no, let's go back to the heart of what you were offering, which was really offering people a space to unearth things or innovate new things that they might not have thought about. And it didn't matter what the industry. So now I do more people ops. So, like really helping teams, organizational health, culture building. I'm like, hey, you already got this team and its processes and systems and, communications, you're missing each other. And then on the other side, it's strategy design, which applies to performance for like products, right? So product design, client design, experience, business development. So it's still 4 different areas, but they all are more people-centered and focused on how to elevate story within organizations that in a way that it actually gives the people that work for them, they recognize those people are treasure and give them more opportunities to not just be, an employee, but like actually elevate their story, look at how they could help you innovate, what things are you not using them for? And then the same thing for like product and processes, like what products are you developing? How could it be different? How could it user interface be different? So it's just same heart, helping people, but aligning it now more around strategy. Yeah,
that's good. And it's, again, clear that each of those things that Trading Fourz does are things that you've, in a time of your life, said, okay, God, yes, I'll do it. And he's taught you all of these things. I think that's cool. Now you're putting it forward. So that's really neat. So now knowing that, looking back on the story, seeing all of the yeses now in place, and looking back at those hard points that we just talked about, what advice would you have for someone that's struggling to feel God's presence in the middle of those chaotic, uncertain times, and knowing that they're trying to say yes in those hard times? What would you say to them?
So I would just say 3 words, right? So, and I can only say what I did, right? I feel like people go through things and like, just do this. And it's like, well, that don't work for me. So the things I did, the Holy Spirit showed me, were invite, create, and play. Invite was, I read this book by Brother Lawrence. I saw it when I was like 15 at this, I call old lady's house. I clearly am their age now. But like one of my friends, my parents' friends, we had it at their house. And I was like, what is this book? And it just looked old and kind of ancient. And it's super small. But it's called Practicing the Presence of God. And it's by this monk called Brother Lawrence. And a lot of people have talked about it, but a lot of people don't read it. It's so small. But he talks about how he went through suffering, and in his suffering that was like daily, like it wasn't like a one-time thing and it went away. It was like something he was plagued with as far as a handicap that he had. So he has this issue and all these things going on. And he said that he felt overwhelmed, that he couldn't see God or feel God in his life the way he thought the other monks were feeling, the other brothers were feeling it in their lives. And he said he just realized that instead of getting frustrated with himself about not spending enough time with God or whatever, he started inviting God into every task. So if he's washing dishes, if he was cleaning up, if he's doing, if he's praying, if he was cleaning the garden or whatever he was doing, every task he invited God into it.
Yeah.
And I just started asking God, like, even like at the hospital with my mom, or when I found out my son was gone, I went to church that day and served. Nobody knew what was happening. I sat in the back, I served, because that was the way that I could, without talking, without processing, invite God into my pain. Create, because we were created. And so it doesn't matter what you create. It doesn't matter if it's something that you think you'll never use. It doesn't matter if it's just a painting. I just started creating. I started learning how to play with Legos, which sounds crazy. I know people have like their hobbies, right? I'm not one of those people. I'm not like, oh, I have every set. Like, it's not that. Okay. I got like 2 little sets that I got off Amazon and just play with them. Play-Doh, all that stuff. I feel like create and play have kind of gone together in my story. But creating allows you, we're made in God's image. If we're made in God's image, he's a creator. So when you create, you are able to see things differently with a different perspective. You get God's vision, right? You get his eyes. So then you're like, okay, God can show you things that he couldn't show you even in grief, right? Even in despair, even in frustration. Play, though, allows release and vulnerability. The thing that comes to mind the most when I started learning about play, or what made me think about play, was the movie Hook. Again, I'm telling my age, but
it's a great movie.
With Robin Williams. It's such a good movie, and it gets slept on all the time. I don't even know where you can stream it now. But like, I have the DVD that nobody watches. So
I got the VHS.
Okay, great.
I'm with you. I got it.
Thank you. But like, there's that scene in Hook where he's sitting at the table and the boys that want him to eat, right? And he's already gone through. They're trying to train him to be Peter Pan, and they keep telling him, "Play, Peter, play." He's like, "I want to eat. I'm hungry." And Tinkerbell's like, "Just play this. Used to be your favorite game." He's like, "I don't know why. There's no food on this table." And so he doesn't have perspective. He can't see it. And the minute he starts to play with them, and the minute he starts going back with Rufio, right? Okay. He starts going back and forth with him. Right?
You got me wanting to go watch it now.
I know, it's so good.
It's been a minute.
He goes back and forth with him. He flicks the little spoon, like he's playing, like there's something on it. And all of a sudden, everything comes to life. He can see it, right? And they really start to eat. And I just feel like Holy Spirit was like, that's what I want to do. That is my kingdom. Right? That is how you get into spaces that you can't get into. You play. When you invite, when you create, people allow you to do things that you would never otherwise be able to do, because you unlock this thing in them to want to be vulnerable. You unlock space for them to imagine with you. You unlock space for them to like see beyond, right? And then Holy Spirit can come in and he can do work that you can't do, because he knows how to transform. So it's just like an agent of change. Like Tinkerbell and them get Peter to the table. And then the minute he allows himself to be vulnerable, then the work happens, right? And that's magic. That's magic. So that's what I've learned.
That's good. That's really good advice. My wife and I have 3 kids now, little kids, 4 and under, and they are my God-given excuses to play. And I love, like, when I come home from work, busy day, sitting down, playing with the Legos, pull the Play-Doh out. The smell of the Play-Doh hits, and it's just like, man.
Because you remember, you're like, I was
work
like
goes away.
Everything is done.
It's the flick of the spoon.
What are we doing? Right, the flick of the spoon. That's true. Good. That is so good. That's so good.
That's wonderful advice. We'll talk more about this creativity in just a second, but let's take a quick break.
Are you struggling to elevate your church's brand in your local community? Nifty 50 Solutions is your partner in marketing your ministry. From dynamic websites to marketing strategies to obtaining the Google grant, Nifty 50 Solutions is your partner. With over a decade of experience in church and nonprofit marketing, Nifty 50 Solutions can help elevate your church or nonprofit to new heights. Visit nifty50solutions.com and sign up for a free consultation.
Okay, Sherita, thank you for walking us through that. I know those were tough times in your life. So for you to talk about how God moved in those moments and the rhythm that he used to bring you through is helpful in so many different ways, but also just encouraging to hear you talk about on the other end of it all, of course, and to talk about what God's done. So real quick before we jump back into the rest of what we have planned for the day of talking about creativity and how it's at the center of everything you do, we have a quick game for you to play. We do this every episode on the show. And so today, your game is called 3 Things. I'll give you an example. Name 3 of your favorite books, and then you like something like that. Okay.
Okay.
Number 1, name 3 famous people you'd love to have dinner with.
I wanted James Earl Jones for so long.
That's a good one.
So it was him and then Tamara Mowry. I would lose my mind if Tamara said yes to having dinner with me. And then Denzel Washington.
Yeah, that's good. Great. That's good. That was quick. You had those on the ready. All right. Number 2, name 3 of your biggest pet peeves.
Don't lie to me. Stop driving slow in the fast lane. Get to the right.
Yes, please.
You feel my anxiety. Jesus is still working that out in me. You hear me? That's why you felt that. Because I can see the people that drive slow.
Yes.
And then do not leave dirty dishes in the sink, please.
There you go.
Just not. Okay.
All right. Number 3, name 3 places you want to visit.
I would love to go to Singapore. I have not been there. Bali.
Okay.
Oh, I know. I want to go to Norway, like to the whole that whole Norway, Finland, Sweden, that area.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Nordic region.
Yeah. All right. Number 4, name 3 books you'd recommend to anyone.
Practicing the Presence of God.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic Mr. Fox. It's a kid's book, but I love it.
Yeah.
And then my book, The Sustainer Within. But it's not really a book. It's a resource. So I would say that. It's for women. It's specifically for women to learn what it means to be a life sustainer.
Number 5, name 3 foods you could eat every day.
Dark chocolate. It's a French way to make eggs. They look like a pillow.
Okay.
They're gorgeous. It's like a French omelet.
Okay. All right.
Pillow. It's so nice. And then Spain. So they have those the little green peppers, and we call them shishito peppers.
Yeah.
They have a totally different name for it.
Yeah.
But for breakfast, you eat that with pan con tomato, and it's like the tomato that's cut up and it's just put on top of this fresh, crusty Spanish bread.
Nice.
I eat that every single day.
All right. Number 6, name 3 apps you use on your phone every day.
We're gonna go in order of like my favorite. Okay. Least to greatest. So Google. Email, yay, wonderful. Gmail, the second one would be every day I use Google Docs, yay. But my absolute favorite app is called Groove. I love Groove so much.
What does it do?
It is a co-working space app. Essentially, it's like helps you do time management, right?
Okay.
But it's also so much more because it's a community of people. So Groove, if I couldn't have any other app on my phone, other than text messages, because I need that. Yeah. I would totally take that app. So those are my 3.
All right, number 7, the last one. Name 3 ways you like to procrastinate.
Cleaning.
Okay.
I will clean. I'm like, that has to be clean. And I'll clean all day. And that, whatever that thing is, still sitting there for me to do it.
Yeah.
Calling people to pray for them. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, you need prayer? Let me pray for you. 3rd way to procrastinate? I say cook. That's my way to procrastinate.
That's funny. The ways you procrastinate are the ones that people are probably like, I'll clean later. I'll call and pray for that person later, and I'm gonna go get fast food. I'm not about to cook and have to clean up all these dishes.
It brings me joy to do all 3 of those things.
That's hilarious.
I'll do it.
Yeah,
that's how I procrastinate though. Like, overachiever.
On another episode, I'm gonna probably ask somebody, "What are your 3 things that you like to procrastinate instead of doing?" And they'll probably say your list.
Say those 3
that you just said.
You're right.
Okay, well, thanks for playing. You did a great job.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now getting back into our conversation, creativity has been at the center of your career in all these different ways through Trading Fourz, even in Dubai, what you were doing there, very heavily centered in creativity.
Yeah.
But at this point, you've kind of talked towards this, but all of these things that God's presented to you and you said yes to had creativity at the center of it. So what would you say at this point in your life that God has taught you in that?
Creativity will get me into spaces that my job title would not, right? Like, people have called me for things. I'm like, how do you know about that? Oh, well, I saw that you created X, Y, and Z, or this person told me that you made X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So what it is, and creativity to me is not just like a art thing. I think people think creativity is like, well, I don't draw, I don't paint. It's like, okay, half the world don't. And people are creative. You're creative simply because of you allow yourself to build something that doesn't exist.
Right.
That can be a community, that could be a space, that could be an environment, it's an atmosphere. It can be plenty of different things. It's a product. But just to create something, it could be a dish, like
Right.
cooking dinner. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just I ask Holy Spirit, what am I creating? What do you want me? What do you want me to build? What do you want me to create? And like with the book that I was telling you about, it was really just to create a space for voices, for people of color that I don't have a space to speak into. Like, for you created this podcast, and I was telling you before we started, like, I feel like you've created a space for people like myself who love Jesus, follow Jesus, but work in the marketplace to like have a voice in a way that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, have a space to share story, see God doing something. So to me, creativity is a part of everything, because God is the ultimate creator. If I'm made in his image, I should be doing what he does. And so, creativity is at the heart of everything, because it's at the heart of who God is.
That's good.
Yeah.
So as you set out with talking with all these organizations, churches, where you are writing a book, whatever it may be, as somebody who is constantly innovating, what's on the horizon for you right now in your career?
I'm still building this publishing company, which is called Kaleidoscope. So I just got to a place where I can start working with authors now. It's a hybrid publishing company.
Okay.
So the author pays up front, but they get more royalties on the back end. And then we walk alongside them as like helping them through the process versus them doing self-publishing and like hiring a vanity press.
Okay.
I'm part of the IBPA, which is Independent Book Publishers Association of North America. And I've just been learning like a fire hydrant for the last 2 years. Like I said, that's why I created the book, The Sustainer Within. It really was to be able to figure out the process of how do I need to position Kaleidoscope to be able to help authors. And then at the same time, I feel like Holy Spirit asked me to do that as an offering, like to trust him to build it, right? That he'll bring the right authors, he'll bring the people, he'll bring the finances and the support. So it's been a very long process, but that's going. And then Trading Fourz, I created a continuous innovation model, and working on trying to get a trademark. It's called the model of immeasurably more. And
awesome.
I based it off of Ephesians 3:20 and the verse that God will give you more, and recognizing that usually when we say more, we think more money, right? Which is also good. But when you look at the context of that, it's also talking about the ability to do more for bringing more people into the kingdom and like empowering more people, right? And so then I realized most companies forget their greatest resource is their people. And we toss people around like it's money. And really they're people. And so that model is, I developed it to do continuous innovation, not just for a product or process or a system, but for people. So those are the big things that I would say God is like working with.
That's really exciting. The model of immeasurably more. I love the title. That's a cool thing. Well, I'll put all your Instagram handle, your website, all that stuff in the show notes so that people can follow along and see all this new stuff that's coming out that you've recently said yes to. Thank you for sharing your story today, and for even just sharing kind of the backside of how God carried you through those hard points in your life and all the way up to what's happening now in your life. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Koby. Again, thank you for making space too for all of us to be able to experience our stories the way that God intended us for us to see them, like through his eyes, and for giving us a platform to be able to go back and even hear how God has brought us through to this point to continue in our faith journey. So thank you for that, for creating.
Thanks for listening to the show today. I hope you leave this episode feeling encouraged and inspired. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show now and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes. To find our other resources or to learn more about Crafted Network, visit craftednetwork.org.